What's hacking? It's quacking, and welcome back to another episode of Happy About Games. This time we're talking about the Sega Genesis Mini 2. And I gotta say, first impressions, as you're seeing right here, wow, this box is small. I was like, this can't be the console. It's so small, it looks so strange. The box has all this text on there too, and it feels like it's hard to really even see what's going on there. But as you can see here, I was hoping to put some nice box in my collection here as a better backdrop, thinking that, oh, my Genesis Mini 2, it'll be a big box like the PlayStation Classic you're seeing here, or compared to the NES and SNES Classic boxes. But no, it is smaller than those. I want to say about 20-30% smaller, and it's apparently also smaller than the Sega Genesis Mini 2. Now, or the Sega Genesis Mini original. Now, I actually did not get the original Sega Genesis Mini. The mini consoles, they've kind of backed off. You don't really see them too much. You do see some Neo Geo stuff here and there and whatnot, but you haven't really seen anything from the mainline game companies like Nintendo, Sega, or Sony in quite a few years so far. But Sega's at it again with the Sega Genesis Mini 2, and a lot of people are scratching their heads thinking, why are we having another mini console from Sega? We already had one, you know, of the Genesis. Why make a second version? Well, that's because there were multiple versions of the Sega Genesis, being the Model 1, which is based on the first model, Model 2, which that's what Genesis Mini 2 is, and there's, of course, the Model 3. I honestly think there could even be a Sega Genesis Mini 3, which I would totally be all for, considering this one right here, just because of its size, do not let that mistake you. It is packed with some heavy hitter titles, some fantastic stuff, that even though it didn't have things like Snatcher, as much as I would love to have that, there is some phenomenal stuff on this console. I think the number one title for me has to be Crusader of Senti. I'm sure for a lot of people as well. That game goes for nearly $1,000 just for the cartridge alone. It was a poor selling sort of Zelda clone for the Sega Genesis, but overall though, it's a really nice game, and I've been in a really big Zelda mood recently, so for me, that is just quite the treat, especially for this to come in. I was expecting this to come in Thursday, but it just so happens it came in a little bit sooner. In fact, I didn't even check my mail, and it came in actually 2 days ago. And I was like, wow, I could have been playing this on Halloween Day, such as games like Splatterhouse 2, which is very spooky indeed. But yeah, before we get more into the games, I'll talk about the specification stuff. So this has over 60 games on it. It has Sega CD titles as well, which, you know, that the original Genesis didn't have that, or the Genesis Mini. The original Genesis Mini had some cool titles like Castlevania Bloodlines, you know, Mega Man The Wily Wars, and for some reason Tetris as well. But this is all about the hidden gems, you could say. The more lesser known titles, the stuff that's more expensive, and I think that is a great way to put it. You know, stuff like the Sega CD games, I always think of the Sega CD as a bit of a commodity. It's not really that amazing. It doesn't really have stuff that can blow people away. You notice have stuff like Sonic the Hedgehog CD or Shining Force CD, and you know, some stuff like, you know, Fatal Fury or Final Fight CD and that kind of stuff. But to me, I never really saw the huge purpose of it, and it had its FNV stuff, you know, stuff like Night Trap, which that is on here. But to me personally, as I said, just didn't really see the huge, you know, that big of a deal with it, which it only has 12 titles in here, which actually I'm totally fine with, considering I did not get the original Sega Genesis Mini. To me, this is a lot of the games in this, you have not seen them re-released. They go for insane, stupidly expensive prices. And if you want a closest possible physical version without breaking the bank, I would say this is the best way to go. Now, this retailed for $100. I did unfortunately pay a little bit more. For some reason, they tacked on about roughly $20 of shipping after taxes, about $140, which to me, that did definitely bother me. But considering the value of this with 60 games, there's a lot of cool stuff on here that has never been released before as well. And they're just really, you could say, they're packing it for almost the fanboy, or really the hardcore fan, the obscure fans, people, stuff that probably people wouldn't really even know about. Like, you know, as I mentioned, Crusader of Senti, there's stuff like DV and Pi, unreleased Sega Genesis games, and even an entirely revamped version of Space Harrier 2, which was, from what I understand, it was a launch title for the Sega Genesis back in the day. And it just chugged. It had a hard time playing on that console. And the Sega Genesis was always known for a authentic arcade experience at home. in this case, it definitely does an amazing job with the Sega Genesis Mini 2. Space Harrier 2 looks phenomenal, and it is fantastic what they redid, how they revamped this. M2 worked on this console. They worked on the previous Genesis Mini 2, or the previous Genesis Mini, and also the PC Engine or TurboGrafx 16 Mini. And if you know M2, they put a lot of labor of love into their console. And that is, of course, no exception with this one as well. It is phenomenal. You know, the game choices here from Sega, amazing job. The redone version of Space Harrier 2. They have some unreleased titles on here, such as I mentioned, Deviant Pi, Fantasy Zone, Spatter, Star Mobile, and Super Locomotive, which is a strange train game that apparently was an from how I'm playing it, it seems like it was an arcade game that, once again, the Genesis is known for an at-home arcade experience. I feel like this Genesis Mini 2 probably is one of the best ways to play a lot of arcade games. They even have something like Puyo Puyo Sun, which apparently is a 2-player game. Now here's the problem about that. This only comes with one controller. Granted, it is a 6-button controller, which I'll show right here. And the controller does feel really nice. The D-pad felt a little strange at first, but and also the mode button up here, which actually, I was really surprised by this. Other mini consoles, they have a very hard time to return to the home menu. You usually have to go down and press like the reset button. For example, here's my NES Mini. Alright, you have to press the reset button to go back to the save slot. But in this case, you can just simply press this and it opens up a menu. Which you could do that for the NES and SNES Classic if you had a Wii Classic controller, but that felt a little odd, and that's, you know, it doesn't really feel as authentic at that purpose. You know, it does have a home button stuff, which is really cool, but in this case, having a mode button, it is nice. It does feel a little odd because it kind of like moves a little bit while your finger is there. It doesn't feel as leveled. It definitely feels a little off compared to the other side, but you know what? That's totally fine by me. And I will speaking of other mini consoles, let's also talk about side comparisons. Now, I've only ever purchased the NES, SNES, and then PlayStation mini consoles. Now in this case, the Sega Genesis Mini 2. I don't have my SNES Classic for reference, but that's fine, because I wanted to show the size comparisons here. So yeah, here is the Sega Genesis Mini 2 next to the NES Classic. It's roughly the same size. I would say the NES maybe outweighs it, or I guess sizes it by a little bit. Then also here is my PlayStation Classic right here as well. Definitely a little bit larger in regards to width. But yeah, the Sega Genesis Mini 2, I'm really impressed by it. The controller's phenomenal. The games are phenomenal. I played it for roughly about 2 hours so far. And I mean, I gotta say, it is fantastic. I play games like Shining Force CD, which is apparently like a reimagining or I guess remaster of the Shining Force Gaiden games for the Sega Game Gear. And I gotta say, I love Fire Emblem, but I have a hard time really staying into it. But Shining Force just might be that kind of answer for me, because that's exactly what this is. It's essentially the counterpart to where it's Fire Emblem, but on the Sega Genesis. I think it's phenomenal. I might even say, so far, how much I'm enjoying Shining Force CD, it might even be better than Fire Emblem. It definitely reminds me of, because I played Pokemon Conquest recently, and it seems like definitely a different experience of like Fire Emblem. And I think it's phenomenal. You know, it is a tactical RPG. They also have Shining Force 2 on here, so I will definitely have a nice filling once I finish Shining Force CD, which seems like there's a lot of stuff packed into that. Tactical RPGs tend to be a while, so yeah, there's that. A lot of fighting games. I played Fatal Fury on here. And I gotta say, the nice thing about the 6 Genesis button controller, it gives you a lot of opportunity for fighting games in particular. Because the arcades, you know, they had a similar experience in this case. Once again, the Sega Genesis is shining through with being a phenomenal arcade experience. Now the problem is, of course, it only has you know, one controller in there. The original Sega Genesis Mini came with 2 controllers. Granted, those are only 3 buttons. In this case, we're getting 1 6-button, so a little bit better in that case, and has this cool mode button as well. I'm not sure if the original controllers had that, but it's definitely a nice addition there. But there's one game on here. I don't know if there's any other game like this, but Puyo Puyo Sun is a game that requires 2 players. You don't really see a whole lot of games out there like this. But, well, I mean, anyways, Puyo Puyo Sun, though, it's essentially Puyo Puyo, but it's 2 players. It's required 2 players as well. So you have a game on here. Technically, it's more like 59 games than 60 that you can't really do anything unless you have a second Sega Genesis mini controller, which I do not, considering this is my first time getting it. But to me, Puyo Puyo never really blew me away along with puzzle games. Maybe I'll just play it just to see how I can't do anything with two controllers. But yeah, let me know down in the comments what you think about the Sega Genesis Mini 2. I guess lastly as well, I'll talk about this. There was some criticisms before in the video about how they kind of cheaped out. And it's unfortunate considering the price of the Sega Genesis Mini being $100. I think that's 20 more than the other, the original Sega Genesis Mini. But they did still have some labor of where the cartridge slot works, which something like the NES Classic, that does not function whatsoever. And I'm sure you have like a tick to want to do that. And then like the PlayStation Classic, they don't really have any kind of similar case. You can't open the lid, you can't do anything whatsoever. But yeah, you can at least do this. I know they sold like little cartridge props for the original that you can use in this too. And also, the side comes off as well. They did not need to do this. There's no really reason to do this, but it's for the CD add-on, which if you have based on the original Genesis Model 2. But yeah, people were definitely a little upset about this, considering they're thinking, oh, it's just another Sega Genesis, mini console. It's the original was better. We already had that. Why get this? Do not sleep on this. I think it's fantastic. It is an Amazon exclusive, and I could see this definitely go up in price. I have not checked the eBay and stuff. That and really anything that's limited time or whatnot. That stuff just spikes in price. I may try jump to my pre-order right away. But yeah, overall, just a ton of value in this mini console. I think that honestly it might be one of my favorites and probably one of the best mini consoles just because of how unique and obscure it is, and that's what I love and stuff. I did get the PlayStation kind of mini just because it was really cheap. I got it $20 at the time. I did get the NES Classic as well. But I think what those consoles really lacked was the obscureness. And the PlayStation Mini did kind of have that. A lot of people criticized for not having mainstream like Symphony of the Night and whatnot, but that it had some alright stuff. But this is all about the obscure. This is all about the brand new stuff that is being released, like retro stuff, which is crazy to think that there's this kind of endorsement from Sega. And overall, even though I'm not really a Sega fan, I think this is going to make me into Sega. Like, this is a perfect introduction, I feel, for someone who's never really played a whole lot of Sega stuff. Or if you're just a retro collector overall. But yeah, it's amazing overall. Just so much stuff really to talk about this. I'm really happy to have my hands on a Sega Genesis Mini 2. But if you would like one as well, go get it. I think Crusader of Century just makes it instantly worth it alone. That game goes for like $700, $800 just for the cartridge. And in this case, considering I spent $140, I think it is well worth it, even if it was $40 more than what I wanted to spend, considering the shipping and the tax and stuff. But it's really cool. It is going to be very awkward, considering I wanted to add this to my nice box collection bag here. I don't think the box looks amazing, especially the size, but do not let that fool you. Do not let that fool you in how much of a hard hitter this system is. It is amazing. A bunch of different stuff I didn't really talk about it, such as, there are borders and stuff, and the input lag it's not really noticeable, I gotta say. It's nice. You can even pick from the second sound chip that the Genesis Model 2 had. You can pick from the original sound chip, or you can pick from the one that the Model 2 had back in the day when they changed the sound. Some people say it's not as good or it's different. To me, I thought it was honestly a brand new sound chip they made for this Mini, but I could be wrong about that. Somebody mentioned in a video that it's from the Model 2, but I think it's honestly a brand new sound chip. But either way, it's different sounding. I think I like it a little bit better than the original. But either way, you pick what you want in regards to that. A lot of great ways to play this mini console, and it is jam-packed with stuff overall. Like 60 games, that has to be the most any mini console's had so far. I'm really looking forward to seeing what Sega does next for mini consoles. Could be a while. This could be the last one, but I know they did hint that they wanted a Dreamcast Mini. They could even do a Sega Saturn or a Master System. I know they had little Game Gear Minis that they literally were Game Gear Minis. They almost were like impossible to play, released only in Japan. But honestly, this was a pretty smart thing, and seeing this probably made a lot of people scoff, thinking that they're just kind of doing this for a cash grab or something. But no, this is an Amazon exclusive. It's priced at a little bit of a higher range, but it is definitely worth the value. But other than that, thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope you get a Sega Genesis Mini 2 if you want it. And of course, Have a great rest of your day.